This feels like a recognition by Europe, Nigel, that they need to have Britain at least when it comes to security and defence.
Yes, and it shows you don't need to be a member of the European Union in order to have influence in Europe. So on the face of it, that's good. And a similar victory has been had with banking and clearing services in the City of London. So we are making some progress. However, what I would say is before the British government decides to head up this new organisation, perhaps we should think about NATO's role. Because if we have NATO and then establish virtually parallel structures in Europe, where does that take us? So, yeah, good news on the face of it, but it does need some thought.
This was always the problem that people like you had with the European army, wasn't it? The much denied, but actually the idea was there for a pan-European army, that it would undermine NATO, which had been the proven guarantor of our peace and stability for 60 years.
Yeah, and no man can serve two masters. So, I mean, it is complicated, but NATO itself's got a problem. Because does it keep on expanding eastwards? Does it really want Ukraine to join? NATO itself, what's America's commitment to it going to be? Now, clearly, if we genuinely thought that America was pulling up the drawbridge from the rest of the world, then perhaps some form of European security defence would become more imperative. I think NATO's the big question first. Let's work out what that's for. But look, I think it's good news. There are lots of European countries, clearly, that are missing us a great deal.
And I wonder if those that are missing us the most are further east. I mean, if you are Poland and you look at Germany, a country which has helped Ukraine by how? By sending them 5,000 helmets and insisting that a British plane or two, C-17s carrying anti-tank weaponry, flies around their airspace. That's how committed the Germans have proved to be to the defence of Ukraine. Not very impressive.
Yeah, and of course wholly dependent upon Mr. Putin's gas as well. So, yes, it's going to be, and obviously Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, most of Central Europe. Actually, the Brits have got great relations with those countries, whether we're inside or outside the European Union. However, if we were to go down this route, I can see a big de Gaulle-like French no coming from President Macron.
Nigel, can I invite you to stick around for just one more story? But first, I'll let Ella Whelan come in on this point about whether there is a British-shaped defence hole in the heart of Europe and if we're about to fill it.
Well, it's hard not to kind of snigger as Brexit supporters, because the myth of the anti-Brexit vote, the kind of Remainer myth, was that an international approach was never possible outside of the context of the European Union, that unless you were a member of the EU, international relations were just impossible. And, the fact that the EU's been, or indeed EU member states are now considering Britain as a force equal to these kind of discussions is interesting. I would perhaps, in a different discussion, question the idea, I think actually much as Nigel has pointed out, question the idea that, has it been that impressive, Britain's approach to the crisis in Ukraine? We have a foreign secretary who's, seems to need more than a geography lesson when talking about how to deal with the crisis. And on a serious note, you have Western nations, particularly in France, the UK, in Germany, saying some really quite dangerous things in relation to heightening tensions. So the idea of creating a new body, which would then act as seems to me, as not just a kind of defence of European safety, but a form of aggression in relation to this sort of situation we're in with Russia, that doesn't seem to me like a positive, however much pleasure I get from the fact that the myth of sort of impossibility of internationalism has been punctured by this.